Thank you all for joining today's CaFÉ webinar. Today we have the last installment in our beginner's guide to CaFÉ, so to speak. So far, we've talked about the majority of the call setup, management, and jury processes. But in this webinar, we'll go over the last few steps you can take to wrap up your call. These are things that you'll do after your jury process is complete, and once you're ready to start taking your event, show, project, whatever it is, outside of CaFÉ and into your gallery, exhibit, public art program, etc. The key items that we'll cover today include notifying artists of the jury results, finalizing the jury status, allowing artists to archive their entries, downloading reports, and cleaning up your list of active calls in your account. The first thing we'll talk about today is notifying artists of the jury results. As I said, we'll show you kind of all the processes that will take place after you've done your jury. So I'll go ahead and open our call. We're going to be in the events management tab to start. This is just to show you kind of where we're at with this call. I'll open it up. So at this point, let's say we're taking place where we left off in our last webinar. We've done the jury process. The jurors have logged in, they've scored the entries, and then I, as the administrator, have gone in and sorted the entries based on those scores between, you can see here, the not invited and the invited statuses. So at this point, the jury is pretty much done. We've done everything we needed to do. These 17 entries here are going to be our invited, and everything else that was submitted is in the not invited status. Keep in mind here, well, I'll show you later, our jury status is still in progress. So it's still kind of as if our jury status is in progress, and I'll explain it later, but we're going to be notifying our artists before we change the jury status. So here I want to make an important note that you'll want to make sure that all the entries are sorted as such, where you have some in not invited, some in invited. Perhaps you've used other statuses like accepted and declined, or various versions of that. So that's okay. I would just make sure that no applications are left in the received status. No applications, unless they were already notified, are left in, things like other, or, other statuses that you might have used to kind of organize your entries. At this point, when we're notifying artists, we're going to be pretty much revealing the status of those entries to them. So you want to make sure that makes sense. So you wouldn't want to email them with their entry still in received if you have an actual result for them, since they won't really know whether or not they'll be invited or not. And that will make more sense later on too. Another thing I'll say is that we're going to be notifying all of our artists today. So you'll want to do the process that I'm about to show you for each of the statuses. So today we have the two, invited and not invited. To notify everyone, we're going to go to the events tab on the top and then the communication tab. So like I said, we're going to email all artists, because that's best practice to email all artists, even if they were not invited to your event. It's just a way to acknowledge and thank artists for applying to your call, especially if they spent time and sometimes money applying to it. It's best to notify everyone so they're not left in the dark about the results of the jury. When we get to this page, we'll make sure our call is listed at the top, and you'll see that we have the same sort of, status division here of all the entries. And again, we have our 9 and not invited and our 17 and invited. What CaFÉ does is it'll send one email to the batch of not invited, or technically you will be sending one email to the batch of not invited folks and one email to the batch of invited. So although you only have to send one per status, you don't have to send, 9 copies to the not invited. So to start, I'm just going to select the status I want to email first. So today I'm going to start off by emailing our not invited artists. So I'm going to check the box next to the status, and I'm going to click draft email. You'll see here that the email form will pop up, and you'll just want to enter your information. You'll want to include your name, reply to email address. So this will be the email address that when they respond to your email, it'll go to this email address rather than going to the email that is just our unmonitored email system. You can CC or BCC anyone here. And you can also choose to send a copy of the email to yourself. So it'll send you the copy of the first email sent that you can keep for your records and things like that. Then you'll want to send a subject here today. Maybe I'll just say CaFÉ Exhibition Demo Results. And in the body here, what you'll want to do is copy or paste or maybe type out a message that is somewhat generic to the artists that are not invited. So when the email is sent, it will auto-populate the artist's name, the username, and the status of their entries, which we'll go over more later. But you'll want to make this message a little bit generic since you're sending it to an entire batch of artists. So I prepared some messages here that I'll just kind of copy and paste, basically just saying in general, thank you for applying. At least one of your pieces were not selected for the event. Again, I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And this is your chance to kind of include any information for the artist. If this was your email to the invited artist, you might have some other info for them regarding the exhibition or the event itself or anything else that you need from the artist. So you'll want to include that here. And then if you want, you can attach a file. It can be any of these accepted file types. Attachments are sometimes handy for sending, additional paperwork to invited artists or maybe flyers for the event, anything that you want. So you can attach a file there. When you are finished editing and entering your email information, you can click preview. On the preview here, you can take a look at the email. This is where it will populate the message that you've included, and you can double check the reply to emails and the first and last name, things like that. You'll see here that it will show you where it's going to auto-populate the first and last name of the artist that you're sending it to. So like I said, we're sending to the entire batch. So whoever gets the email, it'll populate their name. It'll also show you here, this is where it's going to state the name of the image, which is the artwork title the artist included on the image, and the status of the image itself. So it'll say something like, which I'll show a copy of this later on, something like, Untitled Artwork 1, status not invited, since this is our batch to not invited. So it'll show you it there. So this is why you'll want to kind of say like something about how multiple pieces, if you've selected multiple pieces, some of them may not have been invited. If you're included in this email, please see the information above to find out which artworks were not invited. So this is something that you can say to kind of direct them. If an artist submitted multiple images to the same call, but one image was invited and what was not invited, they'll want to look at the top here to see which pieces are which. If all pieces were not invited, they'll see them all listed here. You'll also see at the top here that it says this is a preview of 5 emails that will be sent to the not invited type. If you notice, it says 5 emails. And if you remember, you'll know that we had 9 entries in our not invited emails. This is because 9 is the number of entries and 5 is the number of artists in the not invited status. So like I said, some artists might submit multiple pieces. And if they had multiple pieces in the not invited status, the system will deduplicate the number of emails going out. So they don't receive multiple emails for each not invited entry. They'll just receive the one and all of them will be listed. So if you come here and you notice that the number of emails is less than the number that you've been used to in that not invited status, don't worry about it. That just means that there's less artists than there's are entries. And just to make a note here, our example here is in regards to a scoring by art call. So if you know that we have 2 different jury types in our CaFÉ calls, scoring by art and scoring by application. Scoring by art means that each entry is separated into individual applications. So that's why it will list individual entries and their statuses. And then if it's a scoring by application, it will be a little bit more straightforward in that everyone will just have one application for the most part, and it will show them that their application itself, including all the images in one, was either invited or not invited. So another thing I'll say, this is a common question we often get. Let's say an artist has an image or an entry in the invited status and an image in the not invited status. Like I said, they do deduplicate if they have multiple in one status, but if they do have separate status results for their entries, they will receive a copy for their not invited, and they'll receive an email for their invited, since you're going to be sending one email to the batch of invited and one email to the batch not invited. That means this artist, if they had one invited and one not, they would receive 2 emails and they'd be able to tell which pieces were invited. And I'll show you later on too how they can tell in their CaFÉ account if they, for some reason, lost the email and need to reference it again. Moving on, once you have previewed the email, you can then go ahead and send it. You can save a draft, or you can go back and make changes. If you save a draft, it'll just get added to an email communication tab, and you'll be able to just click on it and load the message into the draft as you would before. So I'm going to go ahead and send our email. You'll see this success message that it's been queued for sending. It may take some time for the emails to go out. I'll also note that emails should be received by the artist's email address that they have on their CaFÉ account. Sometimes email can get finicky and certain email filters or things happen where artists don't receive emails. So I'll show you about a way that you can check on that, make sure that everyone received it. To see a copy of the sent emails, while we don't have one centralized place, what you'll just need to do is go back to the events management page. You'll go click on the status of the artist that you sent the message to. And then once this list pulls up, you can just click on any of these entries by random. So since they were sent to the entire batch, all you have to do is click on the application for one of them, and you'll go to the bottom of their application page, and under the email section, you'll see that it was sent the email here, and it'll tell you what time it was sent. You can also click view email to open up what the email looked like. And here's where I can show you that after the information has been pulled from the system and populated, you'll see here how it addresses to the artist with their first and last name. It'll also state here, this is the name of the piece that was entered. This is the category that piece was entered into. And then this is the status of the piece in the end. So this particular artist account had 2 that were not invited. And you'll see here that it'll show them the name of the piece and that they were not invited. This helps them better be able to decipher which ones were invited and not. To see the report of the email sent to make sure none were bounced, you can go to the Reports tab and click on Events Communication Bounce Report. Here, you'll then just select the call name, and you'll want to run it for the dates that you sent the email. So in this case, we sent it today, so I'll just keep it at today. And I'll just click Run Report. You'll see here that it says no results were found for this search criteria. So that's a good sign. That means that none of the emails I sent out bounced back. If you did receive a bounce, it would be listed here on the bottom, and it'll tell you which email was bounced. So that way you can then perhaps call or email the artist if you're double check their email to make sure it's correct, send it from your own email account, see if that goes through. And that's how you can troubleshoot any of these bounced emails. So that's how you send emails to the artist regarding the jury results. Once we've emailed the artist of the jury results, the next step you need to take is to set your jury status to complete. So like I said, this step happens after you notify the artist, because once you change this to complete, this setting here, that means that the status then becomes visible to the artist. So I'm going to go to the jury administration page. And you'll see here that we have our setup section and the jury settings section here. At the top, we have the jury status. So we had set this to in progress to give jurors access to the entries and score them. It also hid the status of the entries from the artist, so they can't see whether or not, it was being moved around between invited, not invited, or any other status. And now that we've notified the artists and sent our emails, we can change this and publicize those statuses again. So what we'll do is we'll put status to complete. Actually, before I say the changes on them, I was going to show you on the artist side. So let me reopen this. This is a demo artist account, and this is their CaFÉ entries page where it lists all the entries that they've been applying to. You'll see here on the last entry that we have, the call that we're working in today, you'll see how because the status was in progress, we have the status here, jury round 1 in progress. You can tell that that means that they can't see what status their entries are actually in. But as soon as I come to the admin side and I, change that to complete and I click the save button to save those changes, when I refresh the artist side, you'll see that the status then becomes public and they'll be able to see the piece and the status that they're in. So let's say an artist had multiple pieces, but only one of them was invited and 2 others were not invited. They'd be able to come here and see which pieces were invited and which ones were not. So that's an extra step they can take in addition to receiving the email to find the results. That's the step to set the jury status to complete. Like I said, it's better to email them first. That just gives you time to thank them and gives them time to get a notification from you before just happening on the status in their account. Now that you've finished the steps to notify the artist of the results, there are a few things you may want to collect from CaFÉ before you take your event to the next stages. These next few tips are certainly not required steps, but they could be helpful to know so that you can have them available to you. So the first thing is that if you need the images of your invited artist's work, or maybe you want the images for all the works, you'll want to request a download link of the high resolution images. Simply put, if you request these images, which we can do for any status you need, we'll send you a link to download them. To request this, all you need to do is go to the ticket tab on the menu, and you can type in the subject and just choose the name of the event that you're using. Under the issue here, you'll just choose image request. In your message, you'll just want to indicate that you would like the images for your event, and here is where you'll want to tell us the status of the images you want from. So if you just want the images from the invited status, just say, I would like the images from the invited status. You could also tell us you want all of them. Also here, you'll want to let us know if you want the artist names included in the file names of the images. So if you're conducting a jury and you're pulling these images for the sake of the jury, you can ask that we not include the artist names in the image files, so that the jury can be conducted blind. But if you're at the end of your call and you need the images, feel free to say that you'd like the artist names included. That helps you be more organized when you're, downloading those images. So once you've entered your message and filled out the rest of the form, just send it. You can also do the same process just by sending us an email. This is actually the email you'll email us at, probably familiar with it, cafehelp@westaf.org. Send us an email and let us know that you'd like the images for whichever status, and we'd be happy to provide that for you. Basically, when we send you the images, we send you a link. You click that link and it'll start the download on your computer of a zip file that includes the images. At this time, unfortunately, video and audio files are not included in the download, but we hope to include them sometime in the near future. The other thing that you can do to download information from your call before taking everything off of CaFÉ is to download media information or application reports. So I'll go to the Events Management tab. We have several different reports that you can choose from that includes different information that'll help you keep track of the artist, the artwork, and anything that you might need to conduct the event itself. When you go to the Events Management page, you will first go to the application statuses and you'll want to select the status of the information you need. So if I need info from my invited artist, I'll go to the invited status. Once this pulls up and you'll see the long list of applications included in the status, you'll see here that there are multiple options for reports. Under Download XLXS, which is just a spreadsheet, you can download the contact information, application answers, or media information. Contact information will give you a spreadsheet of the artist's names, mailing address, email, phone, and website. Application answers will give you the artist's basic info, like I said before, like their email and their phone and website. It'll also list the answers to the custom form questions if you had any. So if you asked questions such as, when are you available for such and such event, or any other questions that you had about their artwork, if you included that on the application and they answered that question, you can download this report to get all of those answers to those questions for each artist in one spreadsheet. And then media information. This will list the artwork details and include the artist's names, of course, and their contact info. This one will include artist name, the title of their image, the price, the dimensions, the year created, the description, everything that the artist included when they upload their images to CaFÉ. So this is just basic contact info. This is answers to the application questions, and this is the information about their artwork itself. These reports can be downloaded as spreadsheets, and they can be helpful if you need to sort information, quickly retrieve a batch of emails, or just basically export this information to keep it offline. And then under download PDF, we have two options here, applications and media inventory list. The applications PDF will show each application on its own page, along with the thumbnail images. It looks exactly the same as if you were viewing it on CaFÉ, but this may be useful if you need to go offline to review application, or if you're at the end of the call process, you might not need to use this report, but it can help you view any custom form questions that pertain to your event. So this one, I can actually show you what it looks like. Once you click on it, it'll ask you if you need it for the jury specifically, which will make sure it removes contact information, or for the administrator. So I'll go ahead and click administrator. And when I open this up, you'll see that each artist will have its own page here of their application. So it includes the contact information, answers to custom form questions, their statement, and a thumbnail image of the work and the artwork details. And then it'll go to each individual entry down the line. The media inventory list, let me go back here. Let me go back to my invited artist. The media inventory list is a PDF of the media information I talked about, so all those details, medium, price, etc. However, this will show you the thumbnail images in a grid format. So let me click on it here and I'll show you what it looks like. So you can see here that we have the same artwork, but it's just in a little bit more of a easier to read format of the basic details of the artwork. So this is often helpful when you're hanging a show, or maybe you're having the artwork delivered to the space. This you can quickly print out or reference online, and you can quickly check off which pieces you have and the information for them. I would recommend using the spreadsheet version, that media information spreadsheet, to actually create labels and stuff, but this could also help you with that too. So that's what the media inventory list looks like. All right, I have one more report to show you, and that is the income breakdown report. This report is under reports, and you can find it here, income breakdown. So this report can be handy if you need to export the information about the entry fee revenue, if you collect entry fees, or if you just want to download a list of all the artists that they applied and when they applied and submitted their work. It can just be a handy report to have, especially for accounting purposes. So once you go to the reports and then income breakdown report, you'll first select the date range that you need this from. Sometimes you might want to run a report for the month prior to see how many entry fees you'll be collecting in the next batch of remittances. So you can run the report for the month prior. I think we have some early ones here. I'll just go ahead and select a few months prior just so I know that we'll have some results here. So let's just say September up until now. Under filter options, you can include anything in your report. You can make sure you're hiding any check payments. If you really just want to know about credit card transactions, you can do the opposite and hide all credit cards. You might want to hide all $0 transactions if you have an entry fee, but if you don't collect an entry fee and you still want to see the transactions, you'll want to uncheck the hide $0 transactions. And then you can choose to hide any active calls or archived calls. It's default to hide the archived calls so that it's easier to find from your list of active calls. So then go ahead and just choose the call name. You can choose multiple at once if you run multiple calls. And if you don't want to view the report and you just want to download the spreadsheet, you can check this box and it will simply just download the report. But I want to be able to see it on this page, so I'm going to click Run Report without that. Once I click Run Report, it will pull up the details of each transaction. You'll see here it includes the artist's name, the amount that they paid, the breakdown of the fees that they paid. You can see here that this was a free one. You can see that they used a coupon. It'll show you some other information that is needed. And that is basically what you can use to view and see the timestamps of when these transactions took place. And at the very bottom is where you can see any totals for the period and then overall totals for the event. So if you do collect entry fees, this bottom part can be really helpful to see the total collected and the net amount and any credit card transaction fees. You can see what those look like. And then at the bottom, of course, you can also do it at the top too. You can download the spreadsheet, and we have different forms that you can download this report in. Download spreadsheet is the most common one, and you can click to download that. So that can help take some of your accounting things off of CaFÉ and organize them as you need. Now that we have the information and the reports and everything else that we might need to take this exhibition, event, whatever the project is, off of CaFÉ and essentially into the real world, there are just a couple little steps that we can take to just make sure everything is squared away in CaFÉ. This next step, you've probably already taken, and you'll see why. You've probably already taken it, but it's a good step to double check that everything is correct. And that step is just allowing the artist to archive. So we sometimes talk about this where artists need to archive their entries in their CaFÉ portfolio so that they can then reapply those images or edit those images for other events. So it's an important step for artists, and it's important that you as the administrator do the necessary step to be able to release those images back to the artists. So to do this, 2 settings need to be set to allow an artist to archive. The first we already did, and that is to set the jury status to complete. The jury status to complete will then trigger the second setting that needs to be set, which is the prevent artists from archiving setting. That can be found in the events management page and then the call editor. And on the event information tab of the call editor, under the additional settings here, we have the prevent artists from archiving entries setting. So this setting is set to on while your call is in progress and you've accepted entries and everything like that. But as soon as you change that jury status to complete, this setting will actually automatically update to off. So that's why I say this setting is something you've probably already done and you don't really need to worry about it. But just in case, it's a good idea to come here and check to make sure that after your call process is finished, that this setting, prevent artists from archiving entries, is set to off. And if it's not set to off, but it needs to be, feel free to toggle it off and click save. As soon as that's done, that means that artists can then archive their entries from their CaFÉ account. And then we have one last little thing that you can do to make sure everything feels complete and nothing feels left undone. The last thing you can do is to clean up your list of active calls in your account here by archiving the call that you used, that you've just finished. While some like to keep everything under the list of current calls here, sometimes if you have a lot of calls, this list can get really long and it gets difficult to be able to look at and find the call that you're working on in the moment or your new call. So you can have your call be archived, which would put them in this list, the archived event list. All you need to do to archive your event is ask us that we archive it for you. You can do this in the ticket tab again. So just like the image request, you would put in your information, but this time under issue, you can choose the general question. And from here, you can just give us a message that you would like to archive the event that you choose here, or you can give us a list of all the events you want to archive. Once we archive it for you, as you saw before, you'll just be able to see it from the archived event drop-down list. A couple things to keep in mind here. If you do want to view an archived event, you can definitely do that. You just choose it from the bottom here, and you can go in and view the entries or information that were submitted to it. Just so you know, though, because we allowed artists to archive their entries, they can go in and archive their images and remove them from the system, which would remove them from the server. So that just means if an event is archived, you may not be able to get those images downloaded anymore. So it's a good idea to download or have us download and send you the link for any of the images before you ask us to archive it. But you'll still be able to access the information they entered and download any of those reports for an archived event. That's pretty much it. Once you've archived the event, once you've downloaded the information, once you've emailed the artists, that is all you need to do to wrap up your call on CaFÉ. And you can take your event or project off of it and get started with anything you need to do. And you don't have to worry about coming to CaFÉ to do anything else. You know where to find us if you need to create a new one and start the process all over again. Can you download this report after your call closes, but while your jurying process is still in progress? Yes, you can download these reports at any time. You can even download them, much later. If your jury is in progress, that's okay too. You can download them. Nothing really is interconnected in that sense, so no worries there. And then where can the jury scores be found to download? So that's actually really helpful. If you need to kind of see the results, if our artist needs to reference their scores, if you need to reference their scores, or maybe the jurors made some comments, to access the scores for the jurors, from the jurors, you would go to Jury Administration. Then under the Finalize tab here, you will go to the Save Each Round Scoring History. You will go and select the round. If you have multiple jury rounds, it'll say, 1, 2, 3, however many you have, and you can choose which round you're downloading. So you can go through one at a time to download each one. This one, we just had one round, so I would then click Download Round 1 Scores. If I click this button, it'll immediately download the spreadsheet, and that's what you can save to your computer. If you want to just view it real quickly instead of downloading, you can click View. Again, I'll just choose the jury round and I'll click Go. And that will pull up the scoring history and any comments that were left. Good question there. So, yep, that's how you do it. And then if you need to download it again too, you can download it at the bottom of this page. This concludes our webinar of wrapping up calls on CaFÉ. I hope you've learned some helpful tips and feel more confident in the process of closing out your call. Thanks again for joining us, and be sure to join our next webinar next month.